Have you ever wanted to just disappear? To delete everything, ghost everyone, and fix yourself without anyone watching? That urge isn't cowardice. It's a biological defense mechanism. In this video, we'll explore the dark psychology of rebuilding your life in secret and why silence is your ultimate weapon. Let's start with a scenario you know all too well. It's late at night, you feel a sudden surge of motivation, and you decide that tomorrow is the day everything changes. You map out a brilliant plan. You are going to get in shape, launch that business, or completely overhaul your life. And then you make the fatal mistake. You tell someone. Maybe you post a subtle hint on social media. Maybe you text your best friend or tell your family. They reply with words of encouragement, tell you how proud they are, and assure you that you are going to absolutely crush it. For a brief, intoxicating moment, you feel incredible. You feel like you have already won. But then the days pass. Weeks go by, and you haven't done a single thing. The motivation has completely vanished. And when those same people ask you how the project is going, you feel a sickening wave of shame in your stomach. You have to lie, make excuses, or pretend you just changed your mind. Why does this happen to us over and over again? It's not because you are fundamentally lazy. It is because of a neurological trap you walked right into. In behavioral psychology, there is a concept known as social reality, heavily studied by researcher Dr. Peter Gollwitzer. His findings revealed a brutal truth about the human brain. It has a very hard time distinguishing between the satisfaction of talking about a goal and the satisfaction of actually achieving it. When you tell someone about your plans and they acknowledge it, your brain tricks itself into believing that the work is already done. You receive a premature dopamine reward. You get the biochemical payoff of success, the feeling of being respected and admired without having taken a single step. Every time you speak about what you are going to do, you are literally leaking the very dopamine required to actually do the hard work. You are draining your own biological fuel tank just to get a few seconds of external validation. You are trading the energy needed for a marathon for a cheap round of applause at the starting line. This is why building in silence is not just an aesthetic choice to look mysterious on the internet. It is a biological necessity. Silence is deeply uncomfortable. When you keep your mouth shut, the only way your brain can get that hit of dopamine is by actually executing the task. Silence traps the fuel inside the engine, forcing your mind to crave the real results rather than the cheap attention. When you experience a massive public failure, whether that is a humiliating financial collapse, a highly visible breakup, or losing a career you built your entire identity around, something inside of you fundamentally shatters. But if you look closely at that pain, you will realize a harsh truth. The most excruciating part of the experience is rarely the actual loss itself. The true trauma lies in the eyes of the people watching you fall. Psychologists refer to this highly vulnerable state as having a bleeding ego. When your ego is actively bleeding, the absolute last thing you want is an audience. You don't want their unsolicited advice, you don't want their awkward attempts at comfort, and above all, you absolutely do not want their pity. Pity is a uniquely destructive emotion to receive. It feels like a spotlight shining directly on your deepest insecurities. It subtly reinforces the dynamic that you are broken and they are whole, effectively stripping away your dignity and your autonomy. When you attempt to rebuild your life in the open, you subject yourself to the invisible, crushing pressure of social surveillance. Everyone who knows about your downfall is constantly monitoring your recovery. They mean well when they ask, "How are you holding up?" or "Have you figured things out yet?" But your brain does not process this as kindness. Your brain interprets these constant check-ins as a threat. Every well-intentioned question forces you to relive the failure you are desperately trying to overcome. From a neurological standpoint, being constantly observed while you're in a state of vulnerability causes your cortisol levels to skyrocket. This chronic release of stress hormones traps you in a perpetual state of fight or flight. And here is the scientific problem with that. When you are in survival mode, your prefrontal cortex, the exact part of your brain responsible for creativity, logical reasoning, and strategic planning, is severely suppressed. You literally cannot rebuild your life because your brain is too stressed by the audience watching you try. This is exactly why the sudden, intense urge to ghost everyone and disappear from the grid hits you so hard. Modern society might label this behavior as running away, being avoidant, or acting like a coward. But evolutionary biology tells a completely different story. In the wild, when an apex predator is severely wounded, it does not stay out in the open. It finds a dark, quiet cave, and it isolates itself completely until the bleeding stops. Your desire to disappear is not a weakness. It is a deeply embedded biological defense mechanism. You are not going crazy, and you are not being antisocial. Your brain is simply demanding a sterile, unobserved environment to perform emergency surgery on your shattered identity. You must remove the audience so that the wounds can finally close. If you spend any time on the internet, you have probably seen the highly romanticized version of isolation. They call it monk mode. You see these aesthetic videos of people waking up at 4 a.m., drinking black coffee, reading Stoic philosophy, and working out in a dimly lit gym. It looks cinematic. It looks incredibly powerful. But I need to tell you the brutal truth. That is not what rebuilding your life in secret actually looks like. That is just another performance. When you truly disappear, when you cut the noise, step into the shadows, and commit to fixing yourself, you enter a terrifying phase that psychologists call the messy middle. The first week or two might feel liberating. You feel a rush of control. But by month 2 or month 3, the dopamine of your new routine completely wears off, and the silence becomes deafening. You aren't just drinking coffee and reading books. You are staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., battling crippling anxiety, and wondering if you have made a massive mistake. During this phase, you will lose people. You will lose friends. Not necessarily because of some dramatic, explosive argument, but simply because you are no longer available to play the character they assign to you in their lives. The group chats will go quiet. The weekend invitations will stop coming. You will realize how many of your relationships were built entirely on proximity and shared bad habits, rather than genuine connection. And in that sudden void, your mind will play terrifying tricks on you. This is the exact point where 99% of people quit. The isolation becomes too heavy, so they run back to their old habits, they text their toxic ex, and they return to their comfortable distractions just to escape the terrifying echo chamber of their own unresolved thoughts. But if you can force yourself to stay in the dark, you will initiate a profound psychological phenomenon known as ego death. To rebuild a house, you first have to completely demolish the rotten foundation. You literally have to kill off the old version of yourself before the new version has time to form. The ego does not want to die. It will fight you tooth and nail. In the silence, your brain will replay every cringe-worthy mistake, every painful rejection, and every time you fell short. It will try to convince you that this isolation is proof that you are a failure, rather than proof that you are healing. This transition period is not a beautiful, cinematic montage. It is psychological surgery without anesthesia. It is messy, it is bloody, and it requires you to actively mourn the person you used to be. You have to grieve the identity you lost, and the future you thought you were going to have. You are shedding a skin, and shedding a skin always leaves you feeling raw and exposed. So, if you are currently in the middle of your quiet rebuilding phase, and you feel entirely alone, completely overwhelmed, and like you are slowly losing your grip on reality, I want you to take a deep breath. You are not going crazy. The discomfort you are feeling right now is the literal sensation of your neural pathways rewiring themselves. If the silence hurts, it means the surgery is working. If you read modern self-help books, they will almost all tell you the exact same thing when you experience a massive setback. They will tell you to forgive yourself. They will tell you to practice self-compassion, to let go of the past, to release your shame, and to immediately surround yourself with positivity. I am going to tell you the exact opposite. Do not let go of your shame. Shame is not a toxic emotion that you need to meditate away. It is not a flaw in your character. From a neurological standpoint, extreme negative emotion, specifically shame, regret, and humiliation, is one of the most powerful biological catalysts for neuroplasticity known to science. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to fundamentally reorganize itself, to shatter old habits and form entirely new neural connections. Your brain does not want to change when it is comfortable. It only changes when survival demands it. When you experience deep, visceral shame, your nervous system enters a state of hyper-alertness. It makes your neural pathways incredibly malleable. It is essentially your biology trying to burn a permanent lesson into your DNA to ensure you never, ever make the same humiliating mistake again. But here is where most people destroy their own potential. They cannot handle the discomfort of that biological pressure. So, what do? They vent. They call their friends. They complain on the internet. And they seek out people who will tell them, it wasn't your fault, or you did the best you could. Venting is a trap. When you vent, you are releasing the pressure valve. Your brain receives a tiny hit of serotonin and temporary relief. But by releasing that pressure into the open, you are dissipating the very energy required to change your life. Without that intense internal pressure, you will not transform. You will simply numb the pain and repeat the exact same cycle of failure a few months later. This brings us to the second secret of rebuilding in silence. You must learn how to weaponize your shame. Instead of running from the humiliation of your past failures, the heartbreak of your last relationship, or the embarrassment of your financial ruin, I want you to take all of that dark energy and lock it inside a vault in your mind. Treat that shame exactly like a nuclear reactor. A nuclear reactor is highly dangerous if it leaks out into the open. It destroys everything around it. But if it is heavily contained in a pressurized environment, like complete and total silence, it produces enough raw, uninterrupted energy to power an entire city. On the days when you wake up at 5 a.m. and you are utterly exhausted, on the days when you are staring at a blank screen and you want to quit, on the days when the isolation of your silent rebuild feels entirely unbearable, you do not rely on motivation. Motivation is a weak, fleeting, and highly unreliable emotion. Instead, you walk down into that vault in your mind. You tap directly into that reactor of shame, anger, and regret. You remember exactly how it felt to be looked down upon. You remember the exact tone of voice people used when they pitied you. You remember the sting of the failure, and you use that dark, concentrated, highly volatile fuel to force yourself to do the work. You do not need to hate yourself, but you absolutely must respect the power of your own pain. When you rebuild in secret, you are not suppressing your emotions. You are simply refusing to waste them on the ears of people who do not genuinely care. You are conserving every single drop of that psychological agony to forge a version of yourself that is absolutely unbreakable. Now that you understand the biological necessity of silence, and you know how to weaponize your past trauma, we need to talk about execution. Understanding the psychology of isolation is useless if you do not have a tactical framework to protect yourself while you do the work. If you want to completely rewire your life, you need a minimum of 6 months of uninterrupted focus. This is the exact amount of time it takes to break deep-rooted behavioral loops, establish new neural pathways, and build a foundation that will not collapse under pressure. I call this the 6-month ghost strategy, and it operates on 3 absolute rules. Rule number 1, no dramatic exits. When people decide to go into monk mode, their ego usually forces them to make an announcement. They post a black screen on their Instagram story saying, "Taking a break to focus on myself," or they send dramatic paragraphs to their friends explaining why they need space. Do not do this. Announcing your departure is just another disguised attempt to get attention. It is a way of saying, "Please notice that I am leaving." If you are serious about this surgery, you do not announce your exit. You simply evaporate. You stop posting. You stop updating your status. You stop viewing other people's stories. You just quietly step out of the arena. True silence requires 0 explanation. Rule number 2, you must practice absolute information starvation. Obviously, you cannot physically ghost everyone. You still have a job, you still have family, and you still have to exist in the real world. But you do not have to give them your data. When you are rebuilding your life, people are naturally going to ask you, "What have you been up to?" Or, "How are things going?" You must understand that 90% of the time, people are not asking because they want to help you. They are asking because they want to measure your current trajectory against their own. They are looking for data points to judge whether you are doing better or worse than they are. You must starve them of this data. When someone asks you what you are doing, you give them the most boring, vague, and uninteresting answer possible. You look them in the eye, smile politely, and say, "Just keeping my head down, focusing on work, and taking it day by day. That is it. Give them absolutely nothing to hold on to. Do not tell them about your new diet. Do not tell them about the business plan you are writing. Do not tell them about the books you are reading. Keep your responses completely sterile. When you give people zero information, they have no material to build judgments out of, and eventually, they will stop asking. Rule number 3. Brutal, unrewarded consistency. This is where the strategy breaks the weak. When you successfully cut the noise and you starve the world of your information, you are going to be left in a vacuum. There will be no one to cheer for you when you wake up at 5 a.m. There will be no one to validate your late-night study sessions. The only thing keeping you accountable is the promise you made to yourself in the dark. You must repeat your daily disciplines mechanically, without any expectation of a reward. But if you can sustain this for 6 months, something beautiful happens. You achieve a state of absolute psychological freedom. Because when no one knows where you are, no one knows what you are doing, and no one knows what you are building, no one can tell you that you are doing it wrong. Your mind becomes entirely your own. We have finally reached the end of the timeline. You survived the messy middle. You successfully weaponized your shame. You starved the world of your data. And now, it is time for the re-emergence. But before you step back into the light, I have to shatter one final, deeply held illusion. When most people start this journey, their primary motivation is actually quite petty. Be completely honest with yourself right now. When you first felt that intense urge to disappear and rebuild your life in secret, a large part of you did it because you wanted a specific type of revenge. You wanted to build a massive, undeniable success in the shadows, and then suddenly drop it on the table in front of everyone who ever doubted you, pitied you, or walked away from you. You wanted to see the absolute shock on their faces. You wanted to force them to feel stupid for giving up on you. That is a perfectly normal starting point. Anger and ego are fantastic initiators. But here is the most profound psychological twist of the entire silent rebuild process. By the time you actually finish the work, by the time your brain has completely rewired its dopamine receptors and solidified these new neural pathways of extreme self-reliance, something fundamentally shifts inside your consciousness. The day you finally achieve what you set out to do, you will look around and you will suddenly realize you simply do not care about their reaction anymore. The external validation that you were desperately starving for 6 months ago now feels incredibly hollow and entirely meaningless. You don't need them to clap for you, because you have spent the last half year clapping for yourself in the absolute dark. You no longer operate on the same frequency as the people who are constantly performing for an audience. You have entirely transcended the biological trap of social reality. When you finally step back into the world, you won't need to announce your arrival. You won't need to post a massive life update or prove anything to anyone. Your posture, your eye contact, your discipline, and the quiet, undeniable weight of your competence will speak so loudly that you will not have to say a single word. You have not just rebuilt your life, you have resurrected a completely new version of your identity, one that is completely bulletproof to the opinions of the crowd. The psychological surgery is now complete. It is time for you to step out of this sterile room and go do the actual, brutal work. But before you turn off this screen and disappear into your own silent rebuild, I want you to do 2 things for me. First, subscribe to this channel. Let this space be your quiet psychological anchor, the one place you return to when the isolation gets a little too heavy and you need a brutal reminder of why you started. And second, I want you to leave a comment down below. But remember the rules of the dopamine trap. Do not tell me what your goals are. Do not leak your biological fuel. Just leave a simple hourglass emoji or type the exact words, "I am disappearing." Let that comment be the quiet, unspoken pact you make with yourself today. I will see you on the other side. Now, turn off your phone and go to work.